Good afternoon, Cherries fans, and welcome to this latest opposition preview show. So, we are safe in the Premier League after beating Leeds 4-1 last time out. Of course, we can now maybe take it a little bit more easily, but then again, Gary O'Neill is going to try and beat Eddie Howe's record. It is in sight from that season, the second season in the Premier League when we finished ninth. Now, before I do welcome on my very special guest, here's a little bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Bank. .uk. So, of course, this weekend on Saturday at 3 o'clock, normal time, thankfully, we do have the visit from Chelsea. Of course, a team that we've got a pretty good record against. Also, a team that Dominic Solanke used to play for. They've not particularly had a great season so far this year. So it'll be quite interesting to find out a little bit more about why that is. And of course, from Tuchel through Potter and then back to Frank. To discuss this game, it is a pleasure to welcome on a special guest from the channel MAH, Matisse. Good afternoon, Matisse. How are you doing?
Very good, bro. Pleasure to be on. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the game. I'm not going to lie. I think you guys are favourites going into this, definitely, for sure.
And that's crazy saying that because, of course, Chelsea, massive club, finished third last season. We'll discuss our very, very good record against you in a little bit, but it's not been the perfect season. And let's start off from the start. Thomas Tuchel, a man who had done extremely well, but was of course sacked in September. What did the Chelsea fans make of that?
I think it was shock, to be honest. I was definitely shocked. Obviously, at the time, his form was dipping. We had lost to Leeds. We had lost to Southampton. We had lost to Zagreb as well in the Champions League. But I didn't expect him to be sacked. I knew he was under pressure, and I knew that he needed to kind of fix up as soon as possible and get back on the horse. But I wasn't expecting him to be sacked, and it just kind of hit like a ton of bricks. And then not even 24 hours later, we knew Graham Potter was going to be the next manager. There was no, breathing room. There was no period of, who's the next manager going to be. Everybody kind of goes through the short list and kind of picks who they want and go through the pros and cons. It was just Graham Potter's in immediately. So that was something that must have been preempted and must have been pre-planned before the sacking. And yeah, it was crazy, bro. It was incredible.
Of course, Tuchel was employed by Abramovich, and there were, of course, everything that's gone on. There's been in the press so much, and Abramovich did a fantastic job at Chelsea, didn't he? The legacies he left. Do you feel that Bowley has kind of ruined that to an extent at the moment, as it stands?
I think it's tough to gauge if he's ruined it because it's so early, but I think he's definitely made far too many errors in his first season, and it's put us in this position that we're in right now. Chelsea can still respond. They can still come back from this. One season, in this kind of position, I can stomach it, as tough as it is. We're
Mhm.
basically borderline in a relegation battle. The only reason why we're not is because of Thomas Tuchel's points accumulation at the start of the season. But if we had been a little bit less consistent at the start of the season, and we had lost a few more games, we would be right in the thick of it. And I think, this team, the way that they're playing at the moment, I wouldn't count on them to get out of a relegation battle. If we was to get relegated, that would be ruining the legacy for sure, and that would be an outrageous, inexcusable start from third to relegation. I don't think it's ever happened, in history. So, but we're in the battle. We haven't even hit 40 points, and it's just incredible that we can be in early May and not hit 40 points. It's beyond ridiculous.
To be honest, it's kind of eclipsing when Jose Mourinho had that dodgy season, of course, the season where he was sacked.
Yeah.
It's kind of eclipsed that, hasn't it? And
Oh yeah.
it's just shown the wheels have just fallen off. Now,
Mm.
Graham Potter, when he went to Chelsea, I thought that's a good appointment. But the way I look at it now is a slightly different. So at Brighton, Graham Potter had time to build. He was building a club from the ground upwards, about building that side. Whereas at Chelsea, he already had a good starting point and he was trying to push Chelsea to the next level. Do you feel, considering, even though Graham Potter, well, let's be honest, the performance this season has been unacceptable.
Yeah.
Do you feel that he was doing something or building something at Chelsea, or do you feel that he was just a bit out of his depth?
I always wanted to give Graham Potter the fair shake and a fair crack at it, and I think sacking somebody before they've had a full season and a full
Mm,
season and a preseason is always premature, and it's always something that I would try and avoid. But I think as time was going on with Graham Potter, it was starting to become clear to me, and it became clear to many people before me. They'd already run out of patience. My breaking point was the Southampton game at home. I think if you're losing at home to a caretaker manager at the time
yeah,
in Southampton, who were bottom of the league and are still bottom of the league and look like they're going to be relegated, and you're losing at home, and quite convincingly losing at home as well. They were comfortable. I think that's kind of you're getting to a point of no return. And I think the issue with Graham Potter was, no matter what he was trying to build systematically or style of play wise, he didn't have the mentality and the words to match it in terms of
mm,
commanding that authority that you need to command at the top level. Because if you're coming in with a CV like his, where he's clearly gone from Austin to Brighton and he's kind of worked his way up, then you've got to command respect in some capacity. And it's not going to be via your CV when you're working with top players. It's got to be in the way that you speak publicly and the way that you speak privately. And he just came across a little bit too passive and a little bit too nice and trying to be kind of friends with everyone, didn't want to rub anybody up the wrong way. And that may have worked in the beginning, but then when players are seeing massive mistakes and individual errors in matches, when they're seeing poor results, and they've worked under Peps and they've worked under Ancelotti's and they've worked under Conte's, and they're thinking, if I'm comparing you to those managers, the top managers I've worked under, that I've won trophies under, and I'm hearing what you're saying, it's not making sense. It's not adding up. And I think, I don't think everything was his fault. I think, he was put in a tough situation with the amount of players we signed in January, having to kind of reteach all the methods again, having a bloated squad that he could barely communicate with. But he was also starting to make some massive tactical errors, starting to make some really crazy selections. And yeah, just did not demand enough times, did not demand enough results out of the group in tough times. We went through sanctions last season.
yeah.
Everybody knows on record we were, struggling to travel to games and all of these things. And we still finished third, and we still got to 2 cup finals against Liverpool, albeit we lost both of them on penalties. But there was a demand to continue to, put the club in a certain standard, and that's something that Graham Potter didn't demand.
Of course, Frank Lampard is in charge. He is a legend at Chelsea. And I was speaking to Harry Redknapp. We had him on the show quite recently. I was speaking to Harry Redknapp about this, and he was quite concerned, for what it appeared, that Frank going back wasn't the right thing. That there was a deeper rooted problem with the players, because two managers had already tried to get, and let's be honest, the Chelsea squad should be competing for the Premier League title. They should
Mm.
be there or thereabouts. Man City, yes, you could argue they are a little bit ahead, but certainly competing with the likes of Arsenal, Man United, Newcastle. With regards to Frank, firstly, do you think it was right that he come back in? But also, considering the spell he had at Everton, do you think it's the same Frank Lampard that you had before?
It's definitely not the same Frank Lampard we had the first time in terms of the way that he approached games. The first time he was here, he was quite attacking, quite bold, quite. He wanted to do the right things in terms of pressing from the front, and if anything, he left us obviously exposed defensively a few times, maybe systematically. But you could understand that, him
Yeah,
being a very young manager, who tried to do things in the right way. But this time, it's been very cautious, very very defensive, very negative. When I'm seeing 3-6-1s or 3-5-2s against Brentford at home, you're playing Gallagher just behind Sterling up front and Aspilicueta at wing back. I'm starting to question what you're really trying to accomplish here, because that type of system and that type of setup is not going to be what we do next season. If we are to bring in Poch and that is to get confirmed, we're not going to be playing that way under Pochettino. Some of the names and players that he's been using and some of the players he's been leaving out, like Mudryk and Madueke, up until the Arsenal game, these players are going to be featuring under Poch. I would expect them to, at least. So it doesn't seem like he's really preparing us for a season that's pretty much finished and done. The least you can do is make it an extension of pre-season and at least do things that are going to help us next year, which he hasn't done. So he's not really fulfilling any quota, in my opinion, in terms of he's not helping us for the next season in terms of the way that he's setting up the team currently, and he's not getting us results because he's lost every single match. And against you guys, it could be 007. So it's
yeah,
not for good reading. It's poor. It's really really poor.
of course. One thing you could say about Ted Bowley is he spent a lot of money,
Mm,
and the likes of, well, of course, Enzo Fernandez, 106 million, something that was never ever heard of before. Um, you look at the figures. Mudryk as well, 62 million. Do you think any of this money is well spent? Because Cucurella, for example, from Brighton, I would have said, yes, he knew Graham Potter. And I know that he was signed a little bit before Graham Potter come on board. But do you feel that there's been a lot of money thrown at these players
mm.
and they've just failed to deliver?
I think, unfortunately, both managers in Tuchel and Potter have been sacked pretty close to the transfer windows they've been overseen.
Yeah.
Tuchel was sacked one game after the transfer window closed. He only got to use Aubameyang one time
Hmm.
against Dinamo Zagreb, and obviously Cucurella came in that window. Koulibaly as well. Sterling seems pretty disillusioned with the fact that Tuchel was being sacked, which is the manager that we sold to him was going to be in charge of his career at Chelsea.
Yeah.
And now he's seen us regress from manager to manager to manager in terms of the quality of the manager. From Tuchel down to Potter down to Lampard. It's a downward trajectory that a player like Raheem Sterling, who's in the prime of his career, is
Yeah.
not going to take too kindly to. So, and then with the players that we signed in January, it was of an average age was around about maybe 21, 22. The summer window was more of an average age of 28. So that's two different approaches in terms of long-term building and then obviously short-term instant impact and success. So there's been a little bit of a confusion, I think, with the board in terms of what direction they're going in and what their plan is in terms of transfers. And I think they've already admitted, at least reportedly, that they made mistakes in that first window with some of the fees that they paid for, like you mentioned, in a Cucurella. The reason why that fee was so inflated was because of Levi Colwell. Brighton wanted to buy Levi Colwell. We only wanted to loan him out. So effectively, we ended up paying more for Cucurella to agree with Brighton that negotiation. But we still massively overpaid. And that's why Manchester City didn't want to match the 62 million. I still think Cucurella and Sterling and these guys are good players, very good players.
Yeah.
But when you have so much upheaval and so much change in staff and medics and managers, nothing has really stayed stable. It's difficult to find any any continuity between the players and the squad when everything's so chop and change, and we've never gone really with a consistent lineup throughout the season. It's always been one formation and another. I've seen Sterling play wing back. I've seen Cucurella play wing back against Real Madrid, then left side centre back in a 3, then left back in a 4. There's just no stability in the team whatsoever. So as much as the players have been poor and some of the performances have been completely unacceptable and they should be criticised, we have never had a season like this. A lot of these players have performed in title winning teams, or overachieving teams, or in a Chelsea team that were finishing in top 4 last season and were winning the Champions League the year before. So this is a massive anomaly for everybody, including the players, to be in 12th.
When Poch does eventually come in, what is the first thing that he really needs to do? Because of course, Chelsea have spent a lot of money. Even though Ted Bowley is a billionaire, where does his expenditure run out? When is he going to say, right, okay, we need to actually make a little bit of money back before we go out and spend some more? I think it leaves him in quite a difficult position, doesn't it?
I think this summer, the first thing we need to do is sell a lot of players, which is easier said than done because they're on high wages. And we know that outside of the Premier League, there's not a lot of money right now in the European leagues. There's a lot of struggling going on there from COVID times. So we're going to find it difficult to shift these players, but we have to because the squad is too bloated. We have about 35 players.
Yeah.
Plus, we have players coming back from loan deals: Lukaku, Kyle Hudson-Odoi, Ethan Ampadu, to name a couple. And that's the first thing for a manager is to train the players fitness-wise and put together some sort of philosophy and some understanding of what he wants them to do, and to try and communicate that across to 35 players when it should really be 20, 22, max 23 is not ideal. So we have to trim the squad. He has to be very definitive on what he wants and what he doesn't want. The one thing that I didn't like with Lampard when he came in is that he was willing to give everybody a fresh slate. And I think we don't have time for that. You need to come into this squad and assess and understand who can do what you want them to do and who can't do that. And you need to know the players before you even kind of come through the door. And that's something that Pep did at Man City. When he arrived, he immediately said, Joe Hart, you're going. I'm here and you're leaving. And that's that. And there's no negotiation about it. We're not going to take time to try and coach you and improve you. I know you can't do what I need you to do. And that's that. And it's harsh and it's not nice, but when you've got a squad of 35 players, that's how it has to be. It needs to be cutthroat and it needs to be decisive, because I'm sure the players want to know what their futures are as well. I don't think they want to be mucked about for much longer as they have this season. So that's the first thing Poch needs to do, I think, is we need to trim the squad around him. And he needs to be very decisive on players. And then once we've got the outgoings, then if there is a few incomings, then fine. But I'm personally getting quite tired of transfers coming in, to be honest. We've signed so many players. We're still signing young players, left, right, and centre. It's becoming a bit embarrassing. We need to actually develop and use some of the players we've already signed before we end up, kind of double stacking and wasting their careers because we found somebody else. And then the cycle continues. A lot of people talk about youth development and they talk about bringing in players before, they kind of explode onto the scene. But really, it's about integrating. You can sign a load of young players that are talented, but if you don't integrate them correctly, then they're not going to turn out to be anything. And that's something we're seeing with Brighton, is that not only are they scouting correctly, but they're integrating. We saw against Wolves, they make their changes. They bring a few fresh faces in. We saw a debut goal again against Nottingham Forest there in that defeat. They are integrating players very, very well, and they've got plans for them. So obviously we're not Brighton. We don't expect to maybe sell our talents when they reach the pinnacle of their kind of stature and then make a big profit on a Ben White and a Cucurella and probably Caicedo and McAllister this summer. But we need to at least get that, integration period correct, because if we don't, we're just wasting time, wasting money and wasting time.
And of course, the Chelsea youth setup has produced some great players throughout the years. And of course, because Ted Bowley has spent so much money, it is blocking those sort of players off. Is there any players that you feel that Ted Bowley has signed that need shipping out during this summer transfer window?
I think Aubameyang 100% needs to be gone. I wasn't a fan of the transfer in the beginning. I thought it wasn't a striker that suited us, and this is where unfortunately, Thomas Tuchel's recruitment, comes under a lot of scrutiny because yes, he never wanted the role, and he should never have been the person that decides on transfers because he's not a technical sporting director. He's a manager, and this is why you need to put a recruitment team around them, because you can't allow a manager to kind of completely decide on your transfers, because if they make a mess, then the players are most likely going to outlast the manager. So some of his decisions in that window I didn't like. Wanting to play Gallagher in a deep midfield position, wanting Aubameyang, not wanting to keep Colwell, etc. But Aubameyang was clearly a bad move, because this is a Chelsea team that have struggled to create chances, and then you bring in a striker that is effectively relying upon service. When you have Gabriel Jesus, players like that who will contribute to other facets of the game, they will drop deep, link up, they will take people on, they will create chances themselves to add to the lack of chance creation, and they won't be solely dependent on you creating for them. And then you go from there in terms of your finishing. But I think Koulibaly as well, he hasn't settled, and he's of the age where if he doesn't settle, he's not going to get any better. Do you know what I mean? This is his level. He's reached the peak of his career. He needed to come in and kind of have an instant impact. That's what we signed him for. He's an experienced defender. He hasn't played brilliantly. And we've got a lot of young defenders coming through in Levi Colwell. We've got Badia Shile that we signed in January that's been looking really good. I don't know why he's being frozen out. Fofana as well. So we don't really... Silva looks like maybe could be here for one more year to kind of guide these players. So Koulibaly's another one. But he's on huge wages. So trying to ship him is going to be difficult. Cucurella is a strange one because I don't think Cucurella is gonna go after one season, especially with the money we spent. More so because I don't think anybody's going to pay anywhere near what we paid to even even break even on him. And it's unfortunate because we did need to bring in a left back because Ben Chilwell had come off a massive injury, and we didn't have anybody after Alonso went to Barcelona. We didn't have anybody there to fill his shoes, and we didn't know how Chilwell would recover. But when you look at how Ian Matson's playing at Burnley right now, and he's one of our players out on loan for Vincent Kompany, he's been brilliant. And now you look at it and you think you spent 62 million on Cucurella, and you've got Chilwell who costs 50, but you've got Ian Matson who doesn't cost a thing. And you could have easily come in and compete with Chilwell if hindsight, analysis is there. So it's what's going to happen in that left back situation is going to be interesting. But Chilwell just signed a new contract, so it will be Cucurella that between him and Maatsen, whatever Poch decides. And I think Sterling is more up to himself. I think Sterling's he's had a brilliant career. He's shown it at the top level for Liverpool, for City, and he has more than enough, kind of experience that he can contribute to a young team, and I think he'd be good to have around. And I think if a manager gets him back on side and plays to his strengths again, I think he'll be very valuable. But it all depends on whether he actually wants to stay as well. So that's between him and Chelsea. But he's one of those players that if you can get him back to firing on all cylinders, what kind of quality he's bringing, because he's done it in this league for many years.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to say, with regards to Raheem Sterling, I think he's disappointed me. Every time I've watched Chelsea this season, he's disappointed me that he just doesn't seem himself.
No.
It just seems a little bit... And maybe it is because he wasn't ingrained into Potter's way of thinking. But, hopefully, fingers crossed, things will move forwards for him next season. But we're probably the last side you really wanted to play at this point in time. Of course, coming off the back of 4 defeats, we do have a relatively decent record against Chelsea. We have only beaten you 4 times in the Premier League, but I think it's because it's Chelsea, it stands out a little bit more. And of course, what he was going after. Are you concerned? Because this is a mid-table clash, really, now, because we're safe from relegation. I'm sure you're going to be safe from relegation. I see it as a mid-table clash. Are you concerned that we could, because we have got that bit of momentum, that we could get one over on Chelsea again?
I would actually be surprised if you didn't, to be honest. I've been watching you guys, the performance you put in at the Emirates, to score that early and to lose it so late. It was, again, a very impressive performance. To beat Liverpool at home, again, very impressive. To go to Tottenham and win, incredibly impressive and deserved. So I think for me that I'd be surprised if you don't win. I really would. You guys are won 4 out of the last 5, I believe. O'Neill's doing a brilliant job. Billing has been really good this season. I've been impressed with him. Solanke, obviously our former player, has been amongst a few goals here and there. You guys have massively overachieved. Everybody had you to kind of go back down, and Fulham as well.
Yeah.
And you guys have comfortably put yourself in mid-table. And it's an opportunity for you to get above that 40-point mark. For us, we are 4 defeats in the last 5, and we're playing like probably arguably the worst team in the league, maybe with Everton alongside maybe Leeds as well. But we are bottom 3 in terms of teams in the league in terms of performance. And like you said, we see you almost as our bogey team. We struggle against you guys when we're actually good. So to be playing you guys when we're playing this bad is not ideal at all. And I don't have any confidence going into the game whatsoever, because I've been watching this Chelsea team all season, and they have not shown that they are capable of turning this around. It's going to be a very, very long end to the season. Be lucky if Chelsea get a draw in their last 4 games, let alone or 5 games, let alone a win. And yeah, I don't think anybody's coming into this game as a Chelsea fan with any confidence whatsoever, because you can have all of the talented individuals as much as you want, but at the end of the day, in terms of system and the way that we play, we don't play like a Premier League team, and our manager is effectively a bottom 3 Premier League manager as well. So yeah, it's not looking good.
The Champions League, you didn't look like you was doing too badly in,
Mm,
but
yeah,
of course, it was due to Frank why he got knocked out. Although saying that, it was against Real Madrid.
yeah.
Do you feel that it was? Do you feel that Potter would have got beaten by Real Madrid, considering the way they're playing and the way Chelsea are playing?
I think, yeah, I think Potter would have got knocked out. Either Real Madrid or Manchester City would have 100% knocked us out in the semi-final. I think Real Madrid most likely would have beaten us. Maybe it would have been more competitive. I don't think we would have lost 4-0, 2-0 in both ties, but I think we would have potentially gone out as well. Thing is with the Champions League is it's an occasion where we kind of all decide we're going to rise and we're going to try and bring ourselves to our former level, and it's a big opportunity, it's a big occasion, the lights are out, and the crowd are up for it as well. But on a Premier League game in the form that we're in, and the momentum is just with us in terms of losing. Momentum's just constantly just going and going and going. They can't get themselves up for a Premier League game. They cannot do it. Premier League just clearly doesn't interest them anymore. And when you look at the quality of the coaching and the quality of the systems and tactics in this league, Aston Villa, Emery going from 17th up to European spots. There's so many cases for manager of the year, whether you go from, Silva to Emery to Eddie Howe. There's so many cases to be made for manager of the year. It just goes to show the quality in this league. You can't just rock up and think you're going to get results. You have to actually put the work in, and you have to plan, and you have to have a real team. If you don't have that, then you're not going anywhere. And that's where we're at right now.
I know this might sound a strange thing to say, considering you're having a bad season, but next year, Pochettino, great manager, and I really, really do rate him, and I think he will do well for Chelsea if he's given the time by Ted Bowley, which I think he will do. Um, do you think because you won't have European football next season, do you think that might actually benefit Pochettino?
It should. I think we have a tough preseason ahead of us with the amount of players that are going to be here, and also the fact that there isn't much time because we're going to be jetting off to America, and there's a lot of fixtures being played there, but a lot of traveling as well, a lot of flights, 2-hour flights, 2-hour drives, whatever they will be. And the Premier League season comes around so fast; it always catches up on people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of movement to be done in that squad. So I think it could be a slow start to the season, to be honest, because I don't think the preseason is going to go according to plan. But because in my world, I would have put them in a boot camp, in Norway or Sweden, and just not moved one bit, not a single flight outside of that country or outside of that location, and just have them rigorously training day in, day out, and getting themselves ready for the season, because it's been an embarrassment of a season. I think Poch, I agree with you. I rate Poch as well, and I think the fact that he's going to have more time on the training ground in between matches is definitely going to help him, because he knows exactly what he wants to implement. But I do think, yes, I think it should help, but at the same time, the league is very, very competitive now. It's more competitive than when we won it without European football under Conte. There's Newcastle, there's Villa, there's even West Ham spent a lot of money last summer. I think they spent 180 million. If they get themselves right, then they could easily be back in the top 10 next season as well, and pushing teams out the way, and getting back to what they should be doing with the players they have. Brighton's recruitment, and that's excluding the traditional top six. So it's so competitive and it's so difficult that there's just no predicting what's going to happen. And ideally, my objectives would be top four, and to try and have a stab at the cup, but one of the cups. But it all depends on our preparation. If I see in pre-season that we're not ready again, like we were last season, and we've spent more time kind of marketing ourselves and cutting the ribbons basically at events and not training, as hard as we need to train, because we need to treat this like this is do or die, because when we weren't ready for the season last year, and it's shown massively, being maybe one of the contributing factors. So in pre-season, I'll be able to tell, I guess, how serious we are going into next season.
Of course, we beat Leeds 4-1 last time out, and Jefferson Lerma was absolutely on fire. Of course, Phil Billing, quality as well. He's been brilliant all season. And we've got Dongo Atara as well on the right-hand side, who, again, is performing well. Of course, scored the goal against Spurs. Do you feel that midfield battle is firstly where Chelsea have lacked this season, but is that where Bournemouth, if we do win the game, that's where it's going to come from?
Yeah, I think the midfield battle is always huge, and Chelsea have a massive imbalance right now in midfield, and this is where you guys could take, and I expect you probably will take advantage. The fact that we have Enzo playing as the deepest midfielder, when defensively he's not, he's not the most defensive midfielder you'd want to have in your team. He's the player that would maybe play alongside that natural sitter. We have Kante coming back in, who's obviously an incredible player. But I've always said his strengths lead to his weaknesses. The fact that he is a very good ball carrier, he is a very good box-to-box player that can intercept and win the ball high up the pitch. But those strengths lead to 4v2 attacks against Arsenal, and he's not picking out the right pass. He's not a shooter. He's not a player in the final third you want to have there. So he needs to give the ball quite quickly once he breaks away to somebody who can actually finish off the attack and make the most decisive pass necessary. But he can't sit. I've always been against Kante sitting in midfield. Pep's recently, spoken on that position again, where he doesn't want his six to move too much, and he wants them to kind of slow down and so they can see the game. Kante is not that. He's the complete opposite. He's a player that wants to move and wants to rush around and close down spaces, and you wouldn't want him doing anything else. So he's a very specific type of player to have to kind of build around in that midfield. And Cover's been awful. Cover's played a brilliant pass to Madueke for an assist, but he's also the one that let Odegaard go for the goal, and Enzo got nutmegged as well. So, there's a severe lack of effort in that midfield, as well as the imbalance. And that's something that Chelsea have had for years, though. They haven't had a proper, holding midfielder since Nemanja Matic. And I'm a great believer that you need a six. You need a six. It's always been there. And you can see it, Rodri, Casemiro, who's tailed off a bit, but Partey tailed off a bit. But these guys for 80, 90% of the season have been incredible. You need this player. Otherwise you're in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. Before we do the last part, which is, of course, is the prediction, we ask everybody to do this, Matisse. So we will come to that in a second. Do tell everybody about your YouTube channels.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, Matisse. You can type it in MAH, and that's where you'll find me on YouTube, just 3 letters. We just hit the 50K mark, which is fantastic. We've been pushing for the next milestone, covering obviously Chelsea, but also many other clubs as well, and giving our commentary on that. And on Twitter and Instagram, you can catch me, Matisse Armani, there. Same with Twitch, but mainly the YouTube. YouTube is what we're really pushing right now, and we're trying to hit new levels. So yeah, definitely MAH on YouTube.
The link is below in the description, and do please go and subscribe as well. And you're also on DR Sports, aren't you?
Yeah. Big Six
As
as
well as
well.
Big Six
Yeah,
with Turkish.
yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
So yeah,
Sorry, it's
good.
it's mad at the moment. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Well, let's have a prediction of. Well, let's do two parts then. Firstly, how do you think this game is gonna go?
I think you guys are potentially going to score quite early. I think you're going to come out of the
Mhm.
blocks. You're going to be very motivated at home as well, especially in front of your fans, to put another one over us, and to demonstrate that you plan on hitting that 40 mark point before us as well. So I think there could be an early goal. Chelsea, whether they'll be switched on or not, I have big questions and doubts. I don't even know what the lineup could possibly look like from Frank as well. Hoping he starts Madueke and Mudryk, but I can never tell. So I think it's going to be a quick start from you guys.
Any score?
If I'm being honest, unfortunately, I'm probably going to say you guys are going to win 2-1. I think you guys are going to win the game. I'd be shocked if you don't.
Do you know what? I was thinking similar. We are in good form. We are Chelsea's bogey team, or that's what we like to think of ourselves as, Chelsea's
You are.
bogey
You
team.
are. You are.
Um, it is only 4 wins though, Matisse, in the Premier
It
League.
is. I think it's kind of come in quick succession, hasn't it? It's come in a condensed period of time. So
It
I don't know.
has.
It just feels like whenever we play you guys, that there is a problem coming up.
And of course, there was that big 4-0 as well. That
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
wow,
Exactly.
that was phenomenal, to be fair. But yeah, I got to agree. I think it'll be 2-1. But I think we'll go ahead early on. I
Mm,
think we'll probably get a second, and then we'll start sitting back a little bit deeper. And I think Chelsea will get one back probably around about the 70th minute, and then we'll be holding on a little bit towards the end,
mm,
um, which will be a struggle to watch. But at the same time, I think I think we're in good form. I think we're in good form, and I know you mentioned a couple of men for manager of the years.
mm.
Gary O'Neill.
He could. I think in the end he'd probably miss out. I think a lot of these names that I mentioned will miss out, but they should definitely be contenders and they should be spoken of because if everybody said that they expect Fulham and Bournemouth to go straight back down, then when they don't, especially when they don't and they do it comfortably, they have to be given a lot of respect. And you guys have been playing very well for a while now, and the way that you're playing up against some of the big teams, especially, is it's bold. It's very bold. You guys are not just coming and sitting back and preying on a 1-0, smash and grab. You guys are coming in and properly playing out, outplaying teams. So I think he's got to be a shout. I think he's got to be a shout. I think he's got to be a shout. Marco Silva's got to be a shout. Similar territory. Obviously, I think Emery's just kind of done a madness there to come from 17th to European places. Kind of, I've not seen a rise like that in how long. From where Gerrard left that team, and obviously Eddie Howe, and obviously then Arteta and Pep as well. So it's a lot of managers and De Zerbi. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy how many managers are really warranted for this award.
I think my vote, even though Gary's done a fantastic job, and he's come under a lot of criticism from the Bournemouth fans, but to be fair, he's answered those in the best possible way by keeping the club in the Premier League and doing so well, and doing it in a style which, where he's shown that he's learned as well. He's
Mm,
learned on the job. Earlier on in the season, we got beat 3-2 by Spurs. We also got beat from 3-1 up, 4-3 by Leeds. He's learned from those days, and he's not sitting too far back. He
mm.
still does it a little bit at times, but he's started to learn that. What one thing I was going to ask you, Matisse, as well, because you do look at the rest of the Premier League. Which three teams do you think are going down?
I think Southampton 100% are down.
Yeah.
Um, I have Leeds in there. and then Sam Allardyce comes in and gives them some hope, because I think Garcia was 100% taking them down. When I look
Yeah,
at Leeds' fixtures and I see Manchester City away and I see West Ham, Tottenham, Newcastle, I still believe that they're probably going to go down even under Sam Allardyce. I just think it's a very difficult task to stop that team from conceding so many goals so quickly, very short space of time. So I'm going to stick with Leeds, and I'm going to go with Nottingham Forest as well. Something tells me with Everton that they might just get out of it, despite how bad their attack is. They've got a terrible attack under Sean Dyche, but I can see his experience playing a part and maybe just getting them out. And Leicester have got some really good individual quality with Madison, and if they can keep him fit, and they might just escape as well. But it's going to be tight. It's between those teams there. I think everybody else, West Ham and everybody else, is going to be fine. Wolves and whatnot.
yeah. I think it's 2 out of 4, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
and it is going to be very, very close. And to be honest, I've got to agree on Leeds with their fixture list.
Mm.
It looks horrendous. With Everton, though,
Yeah.
for what you said, their attacking prowess, I think Forest have been playing quite decent, playing quite well, but not getting the results. Of
Mm.
course, they were ahead against Liverpool,
Yeah.
ended up getting beat. Ahead against Brentford, ended up getting beat.
Mm.
I think something will fall eventually for Steve Cooper,
Mm.
and he'll get them out of it. But we shall see. We shall see. But of course, our focus is on this mid-table battle. End of the season. Really, nothing too much to play for. Well, apart from pride, isn't it? Really.
Exactly. Exactly. Pride of London, which we haven't.
Yeah. Well, at least with the pride of the South Coast. Oh, sorry, Brighton. Yeah, I forgot all
Yeah.
about them. They're a little bit further away, but yeah, at least we got the bragging rights over Southampton. But Matisse, thank you so much for coming on. It's an
Pleasure.
absolute pleasure. Keep up all the great work with all the channels,
Thank you.
and no doubt we'll catch up next season.
100%. We'll be here. We'll both be in the
Excellent.
league. Big
We
ups.
certainly will be. See you soon, mate. Take care. Bye bye. And thank you everybody for joining me on this show. Please remember to hit the like, the subscribe, the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do. Do also check out our previous interview with Harry Redknapp. It is on the channel as well. He does discuss, of course, Chelsea and the situation. It is in the relegation show there. Also, do check out all of the videos. Hit that like, that subscribe, and that bell button, and also let us know what you think the score will be. It does mean the world to us, so do share this video around. Until the next one, up the cherries, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for joining us.